My name is Eleanor, and I am 84 years old, and the day I stopped talking to my daughter was the exact same day she finally called me back. Now that might sound like coincidence to you. Timing, luck. It wasn't. It took me 17 years of silence and one decision I never thought I'd make to understand why that call came when it did. Before that day, I used to sit in the same chair every evening, staring at a phone that never rang. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on Christmas. Not even the year her father died. Maybe you know that feeling? Maybe you've checked your phone more times than you'd like to admit. Tell yourself, she's busy. She'll call tomorrow. Maybe you've even rehearsed conversations in your head that never happened. I did all of that. I told myself stories to make the silence easier to carry. She's working hard. She's got her own family now. She'll come around. But deep down, I knew the truth. She wasn't coming around. And the worst part? I couldn't even tell you exactly when we lost each other. There was no big explosion, no dramatic goodbye. Just small things. Words said the wrong way. Pride that stayed too long. Calls that became shorter until they stopped altogether. 17 years. That's how long a mother can go from being everything in a girl's life to being nothing at all. And here's the part no one tells you. Time doesn't heal that kind of silence. It hardens it. Every year that passed made it harder to reach out. Harder to admit I missed her. Harder to say, maybe I was wrong. So I didn't. I waited. And waiting became my life. Until one morning something shifted. Not in her. In me. I woke up and realized if I died that week, my daughter wouldn't even know who I had become. And worse, I didn't know who she had become either. That's when I made the decision. The one I should have made years earlier. The one that terrified me more than the silence ever did. I decided to stop waiting for my daughter to come back. And that was the exact day. My phone rang. You need to understand something about me before you judge what I did. I wasn't an absent mother. At least, that's what I told myself for most of my life. I worked 6 days a week for over 30 years. Steel factory, long shifts, overtime whenever they offered it. My hands were always cut, always rough. But there was always food on the table, bills paid, school fees handled, no complaints. That was my definition of love, providing. I didn't grow up with a mother who talked much. Mine believed in one thing. You do your job, you don't complain, and you don't get soft. So I raised my daughter the same way. I thought I was doing it right. I taught her discipline, respect, hard work. I made sure she never lacked anything, except maybe the one thing she actually needed, me. But you don't see that when you're in it. You think being there physically is enough. You think putting a roof over someone's head is the same as being present in their life. It's not. I remember one night, she must have been about 12. She came into the living room while I was watching the news. She stood there for a moment, quiet, like she was building up courage. Then she said, "Mom, can you come see something?" I didn't even look away from the television. I said, "Not now, I'm tired, tomorrow." She nodded, said, "Okay," and walked away. I don't remember what she wanted to show me, but I remember that moment, because years later, when I tried to call her, she did the same thing to me. "Not now, Mom. I'm busy. Maybe another time." That's how it happens. Not in one big mistake. In hundreds of small ones you barely notice until they come back to collect. As she got older, the distance didn't come all at once. It was gradual, subtle. Conversations became shorter, then less frequent. Then, optional. Until one day I realized I didn't know what was happening in her life anymore. Not really. And instead of fixing it, I did what most women my generation do. I blamed her. I told myself, kids these days don't respect their parents. I gave her everything. She's ungrateful. That story made it easier to sleep at night. But it also kept me stuck. Because as long as I was right, I didn't have to change. The last real conversation we had wasn't even a fight. Not the kind people imagine. It was quiet, cold. She said something about how I was never around, even when I was sitting right there in the house. I laughed. Actually, I laughed. I said, "You have no idea what I sacrificed for you." And she looked at me in a way I had never seen before. Not angry, not emotional, just done. She said, "That's the problem, Mom. Everything you did, you think it replaces everything you didn't?" Then she left. And that was it. No shouting, no slammed doors, no dramatic ending. Just a sentence that stayed in my head for the next 17 years. At first, I expected her to come back. Children always come back, right? That's what people say. But weeks turned into months, months into years. At some point, pride steps in. You start thinking, if she wants to talk, she knows where to find me. So you wait. And the longer you wait, the heavier that silence becomes. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. I would pick up the phone sometimes, dial halfway, then stop. Hang up, tell myself not today, because reaching out after that long, it doesn't feel simple anymore. It feels like surrender. And I wasn't ready to surrender, not to her, not to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I had failed in a way that working harder could never fix. So I built a routine around the absence. Wake up, eat, sit, watch time pass. You learn to live without certain people, or at least you learn to pretend. But here's the truth I didn't admit to anyone. Every quiet house has an echo, and mine echoed her name every single day. I saw mothers my age with their daughters, laughing, arguing, sharing small moments that didn't look like much, but meant everything. And I would think to myself, when did I lose that? But I never asked the more important question. How did I lose that? Because that question, that one requires honesty. And honesty is expensive. It costs you your excuses. It costs you your pride. It costs you the version of yourself you've been protecting for years. And I wasn't ready to pay that price, not yet. So instead, I waited. 17 years of waiting, until the day I finally understood something most people learn too late. Silence is not peace. Silence is distance, slowly becoming permanent. And if you don't interrupt it, it will finish the story for you. It took me 17 years to understand this, and I'm going to give it to you in 4 steps, not theories, not something I read in a book. These are the exact shifts that led to that phone call, and the last one is the hardest to accept because it goes against everything you've been taught about pride, respect, and being right. Step 1. Stop rewriting the story to protect your ego. For years, I told myself a very clean version of what happened between me and my daughter. I did my best. She chose to leave. She'll come back when she matures. That story protected me, but it also trapped me, because as long as the story made me the victim, I had no reason to change anything. Let me tell you about a woman I knew, Josephine. Same age as me, same situation. Her daughter hadn't spoken to her in over a decade. Every time her name came up, she'd say, "I don't know what I did wrong. Kids today are just different." But one evening, after a few drinks, she admitted something quietly. She used to ask me to come to her school events. I never went. Always said I was busy. Then she laughed it off, changed the subject, went right back to the story where she did nothing wrong. That's what we do. We take the parts of the story that hurt, and we file them away where we don't have to look at them. But here's the truth. You cannot fix a relationship using a version of the story that isn't honest. The day things changed for me was the day I stopped saying, I did my best, and started asking, where did I fail her? Not as punishment, as for clarity. Step 2, accept that time doesn't heal distance, it deepens it. People love to say, give it time. Time doesn't fix broken relationships, time buries them. Every year you don't speak adds weight, more misunderstanding, more assumptions, more fear of reaching out. I learned this watching my neighbor, Martha. She and her sister stopped talking over something small, something about money, I think. They both said the same thing. She should call first. 10 years passed. Then one day Martha got a call, not from her sister, from the hospital. Too late. And the words she said to me that evening, I will never forget. I thought we had more time to fix it. We all think that. We treat relationships like they're on pause. They're not. They're either growing or fading, and silence always leans in one direction. Step 3, understand this. Being right can cost you the relationship. This is where most people get stuck, because it feels justified. I spent years holding on to one simple belief. I was right. I worked hard. I provided. I sacrificed. So when my daughter said I wasn't there for her, I rejected it completely, because accepting her version of the truth would mean admitting that my way of loving her wasn't enough. And that's a hard thing for a woman to face. But here's what I eventually realized. A relationship is not a courtroom. There is no judge, no winner, no final verdict. There's only one connection, or distance. You can be right and still end up alone. I had a friend named Daniel, brilliant man, always had an answer for everything. His daughter stopped visiting years ago. One day I asked him, have you ever tried to talk to her about it? He said, why should I? I did nothing wrong. And that was it. Case closed. Except his house is quiet now, too. Being right gave him something to hold on to, but it cost him someone he couldn't replace. Step 4, stop waiting for them to change, and change your position. Instead, this is the step that changed everything. For 17 years, I waited for my daughter to make the first move, to apologize, to call, to fix what was broken. I thought that was fair. I thought that was strength. It wasn't. It was avoidance, dressed up as pride. Because waiting requires nothing from you. No vulnerability, no risk, no rejection. But it also guarantees one thing. Nothing changes. In the morning, everything shifted. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. Tired of the silence, tired of the stories, tired of pretending I didn't care. And I asked myself one question. If she never changes, am I willing to lose her forever just to protect my pride? That question doesn't leave you comfortable. It forces a decision. So I stopped waiting, not because I knew what would happen, but because I finally understood something simple. If someone has to move first, it might as well be the one who's aware enough to see the problem. And that was me. Now listen carefully. These steps didn't fix my relationship overnight. They didn't guarantee anything. What they did was change me. And sometimes That's the only part you actually control. Because the truth is, you can't force someone to come back into your life, but you can remove the reasons they stayed away. And sometimes that's all it takes for the phone to ring. I'm going to tell you something most people will disagree with. And if you're like the woman I used to be, you'll feel resistance the moment you hear it. Here it is. Sometimes the distance between you and your child is not because they are wrong. It's because they experienced you differently than you experienced yourself. Now that sounds unfair, doesn't it? Because in your mind, you remember everything you did for them, the sacrifices, the long hours, the pressure you carried so they wouldn't have to. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Children don't measure love by what you provide. They measure it by how you made them feel. And those two things are not the same. I used to believe something very strongly. If I gave my daughter everything I didn't have, then I did my job. That belief kept me proud. It also kept me blind. Because while I was measuring success in bills paid and responsibilities handled, my daughter was measuring something else entirely. Attention, presence, emotional safety. Things I thought were optional, she experienced as essential. And this is where most parents get it wrong. We judge our parenting by our intentions. Our children judge it by their experience. Those two rarely match perfectly. Let me give you an example. I knew a woman named Richard, good person, honest, worked herself into the ground to build a comfortable life for her family. Her daughter stopped visiting her after she turned 30. Richard couldn't understand it. I paid for her education, she told me. I gave her opportunities I never had, and she wasn't lying. But one afternoon, her daughter finally agreed to meet her for coffee. And during that conversation, the girl said something that completely shook her. You gave me everything, except the feeling that I mattered to you. Now, imagine hearing that after spending your whole life believing the opposite. Richard told me later that sentence felt like an accusation, but it wasn't. It was a description of how her daughter experienced her. And that's the part most people reject. Here's the contrarian truth. You can be a good parent and still leave emotional gaps your child carries into adulthood. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't understand what they needed at the time. And once those gaps form, they don't just disappear. They shape how your child sees you, how they respond to you, how close or distant they feel. Now let me say something even harder. Sometimes your child is not waiting for an apology. They're waiting for acknowledgement. There's a difference. An apology says, I'm sorry. Acknowledgement says, I see what you felt. I understand it mattered. And I'm not going to argue with your experience. Most people skip that second part. They apologize, but then immediately defend themselves. I'm sorry, but you have to understand I did the best I could. You're being unfair. And just like that, the door closes again, because the child isn't being heard. They're being corrected. I made that mistake for years. In my mind, I thought, if she just understood my side, everything would be okay. But relationships don't heal through explanation. They heal through validation. And validation doesn't mean you agree with everything. It means you respect that their experience is real, even if it's different from your memory. Another thing people don't like to hear, your child does not owe you a relationship simply because you raised them. I know that one stings because we were taught the opposite. We were taught that respect is automatic, that loyalty is guaranteed, that family stays connected no matter what. But reality doesn't work that way. A relationship in adulthood is not built on obligation. It's built on emotional safety. If your child feels judged, dismissed, or misunderstood around you, they will create distance, not out of hatred, out of protection. Let me tell you about a woman I met, Clara. Her daughter hadn't spoken to her in years. Clara would say, "After everything I did for her, this is how she repays me?" And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But when I asked her, "What does your daughter say the problem is?" she paused, then said, "She says I never listened to her, that I always made everything about me." Clara shook her head. "That's not true. But here's the thing. Whether Clara agreed or not, that was her daughter's experience. And as long as Clara kept rejecting it, nothing changed. This is where the real shift happens. Not when you prove your point, not when you defend your past, but when you become willing to say, maybe there are parts of this I didn't see clearly. That sentence alone can open doors that have been closed for years. Now let me bring this back to you. If there is someone in your life right now, your son, your daughter, someone you've lost, ask yourself this, honestly. Am I trying to be understood, or am I trying to understand? Because those are two very different positions, and only one of them rebuilds the connection. The day I stopped needing my daughter to see me as the good mother was the day I became someone she could actually talk to again, because I was no longer defending a role. I was showing up as a person, flawed, aware, willing, and that changes everything. I'm going to give you something now that I wish someone had given me 17 years earlier. Not advice, not theory. A simple technique that changes how you show up in a broken relationship almost immediately. And it works because it removes the one thing that keeps most people stuck, defensiveness. I call it this, the no defense conversation. Here's how it works. When you finally speak to that person, your daughter, whoever it is, you make one internal decision before the conversation even begins. I will not defend myself, no matter what she says. Not once, not even a little. Now I know what you're thinking. That's not fair. What if she says things that aren't true? What if she blames me for everything? Exactly. That's why this works. Because most conversations don't break down due to what's being said. They break down because of how quickly we move to defend ourselves. The moment you say, "That's not what happened," the conversation is no longer about understanding. It becomes a battle over who is right. And once it becomes a battle, connection is gone. Let me show you what I mean. Before I understood this, every imagined conversation with my daughter went like this. She says, "You were never there for me." And I respond, "That's not true. I worked every day for you. I sacrificed everything." Now what happens? She feels dismissed. I feel unappreciated. Both of us walk away more certain that the other person doesn't understand. That's the loop, and it never leads anywhere new. Now here's the shift. Same situation, but this time, no defense. She says, "You were never there for me." And instead of correcting her, I say, "I hear you. That's it. No explanation, no justification, just acknowledgement." Then I follow it with one question. "Can you tell me more about what that felt like for you? Do you see the difference? Instead of shutting the door, you're opening it wider. I tested this with someone before I ever used it with my daughter, a man named Peter. He hadn't spoken to his daughter in years. I told him, "When you talk to her, don't defend yourself, not once." He laughed, said, "That's impossible." But he tried it. And later he told me something that surprised even him. "She kept talking," he said. "For the first time, she didn't shut down." Why? Because she didn't feel interrupted. She didn't feel corrected. She felt heard. And when people feel heard, they soften. Now let me be clear. This technique is not about agreeing with everything. It's about creating space, because space is what allows truth to surface. When someone has been holding something in for years, they don't need you to fix it. They need you to let it out. Here's the structure I used when my moment finally came. Step 1, acknowledge without correction. I hear you. I understand why you'd feel that way. That makes sense from your side. Step 2, invite deeper expression. Can you tell me more? What was that like for you? When did you start feeling that way? Step 3, reflect back what you hear. So you felt like I wasn't really present, even when I was there? You felt like I chose work over you? Step 4, take ownership where I can see how I contributed to that. I didn't realize it at the time, but I see it now. No defense, no but. The goal of this conversation is not to fix the past. It's to change the emotional pattern, because if the pattern changes, the relationship has a chance to change with it. When I finally spoke to my daughter, I didn't go in with speeches. I went in with one goal, to understand her, without protecting myself. And for the first time in 17 years, we were connecting. If you've stayed with me this far, then this isn't just a story to you, it's personal. If there is someone in your life right now, someone you haven't spoken to in a long time, don't wait. Not another month, not another holiday. You don't need perfect words. Just interrupt the silence. I've been thinking about you. I miss you. I'd like to understand. That's enough. And if they don't respond right away, it doesn't mean it didn't matter. Now ask yourself, who is the one person you're thinking about right now? That's the one that still matters. You're not alone in this. There are thousands of people waiting, just like you. So if this spoke to you, write this: I'm ready to break the silence, or I'm thinking about it, because even that is a step. At 84, you realize something simple. Pride doesn't keep you company. People do, and the conversations you didn't have stay the longest. So take this with you. It is never the wrong time to choose connection over pride. Never. Now tell me, who are you ready to reach out to?